Hey VC, it's Jonathan, the cheap and cheerful record collector. I hope everybody's doing well out there today. I was watching a video the other day from Glenn Kellaway from the basement. I'm sure you all know Glenn Kellaway's channel. He puts out a lot of great content. Last week he put out a video of 11 favorite blues albums. So I said to myself, well, I'm a blues hound. I've been for many years. I can do that. And of course, as I start picking through my albums, I said, well, I can't leave him out. So, all right, so it's 15 blues albums. All right, it's 20. Okay, 23. All right, so that's where I ended up at 23 albums that, for me, are my favorite blues albums of all time. I've been a blues hound since I was a teenager. And anyway, we've got 23 records to go through, so you jump on it soon. The first one is a white Chicago harmonica player, and it's not who you think. It's not Paul Butterfield, but it is Charlie Musselwhite. And this is his album, Stand Back. Here comes the Charlie Musselwhite Southside Band. Fantastic album. Originally released in 1967. This is the 2015 Record Store Day re-release. They copied the Vanguard label beautifully. Big fan of Charlie Musselwhite. I have a number of his albums. Two or three I could have picked, but I really like the Stand Back album, one of his earlier stuff. He's still with us today, still playing and touring. On this album, he has Harvey Mandel playing guitar. Harvey Mandel, played with Canned Heat, the second iteration of Canned Heat. Also on here is Barry Goldberg, Bob Anderson, and Fred Bello Jr. Just a great Chicago blues, great singer, and harmonica player. So, number 23 on my list, Charlie Musselwhite's Southside Band, Stand Back. Next one is a great piano player who I saw, and this is Memphis Slim and Willie Dixon, and this is Songs of Memphis Slim and Willie Dixon on Folkways, originally released in 1960. This is a 1968 repress. In 1965, I was at the Newport Folk Festival. It was the weekend of my 16th birthday, and I got to see these two guys play. Everyone knows Willie Dixon. He wrote almost all the great blues songs that you know. Memphis Slim, fantastic piano player. This even came with a booklet inside with all the lyrics, which you know I love. A lot of boogie-woogie kind of piano playing by Memphis. And Willie Dixon, of course, great backup on bass. But fantastic album. Memphis Slim, Willie Dixon. Next up is one of the Kings, not BB and not Albert, but Freddy King. And this is his album, The Mojo. This is a 2019 Record Store Day compilation. This was never released as an album by itself. These are all singles recorded for King Records from 1960 and 1968. CC Baby, Just Pickin', Walk Down the Line, Closed Door, Heads Up, fantastic album. Freddy King, one of the great guitar players. Next one, this is a guy who I first saw, 1964, when I was 15 years old. Buddy and I drove into New York City, got to this club, and you had to be 18 to get in, but my buddy, who was a great talker, talked ourselves into the club. We sat in the back and didn't drink alcohol, just drank out Cokes or whatever it was, and watched the great John Hammond. And this is his album, Big City Blues. I met him a couple of years ago at the North Atlantic Blues Festival up here in Rockland, Maine, and we talked about that, and he was happy to sign the record for me. This is a great album. I'm Ready, My Starter Won't Start, Barbecue Blues, yada, just great album. Love John Hammond, one of the first of the white boys to play blues, along with Charlie Musselwhite and Paul Butterfield, but really up there, one of the earlier ones. And a great album by the great John Hammond. Next up, we have Jimmy Reid, 1981 release called Got Me Dizzy on Charlie Records. It's a UK pressing. Yeah, Charlie Records. again, was not originally released as an album. These are all singles recorded from the 1950s. Let's see, it started 1953 up to like 58. 16 tracks, and all from the original tapes, original master tapes, as it says on the back here. Meanwhile, all tracks on this album are from copy master tapes, not dubbed off disc, metalwork, lacquers, or Aunt Fanny's old corsets. Okay, so stop reading and start buying. Originally, all tracks licensed from VJ Records, so originally recorded for VJ. Great, Jimmy Reid. Another one coming up here. This is a album I had many years ago when I was a teenager, and another white boy blues album. I just amazing record. Love this album, and it's called Blues. Lots more Blues, Rags, and Hollers. They had another now called Blues, Rags, and Hollers. This is the second, which I seem to like a little better. Spider John Kerner, Tony Little Son Glover, and Dave Snaker Ray. Recorded originally 1964. This is an original pressing. All this, I mean, it just, what can I say? Red Cross Store, Freeze to Me Mama, Fannin Street, Love Bug, Black Dog, the song Black Betty, which you know from, what is it, Jay Giles. They recorded this first in 64. They are obviously not the first ones to record it, but there is a fantastic version of that. And I think that's where Jay Giles got his version from these guys. They put out a number of albums. They're very influential. They knew Bob Dylan. Bonnie Raitt was a big fan of them. So a fantastic album. I love this record. Listen to this all the time. I have a number of their solo albums as well, but lots more Blues, Rags, and Hollers. I couldn't leave these guys out because when I was back in high school, I remember one day one of the guys in the class talking about music, and someone asked him, "Who's the best harmonica player you know?" And he said, "Got to be Sonny Terry." So Brandon McGee and Sonny Terry, along with Earl Hooker, in the album I Couldn't Believe My Eyes, from 1973, recorded 1969, with Brandon McGee on guitar and vocals, Sonny Terry on harmonica and vocals, Earl Hooker on guitar. Bluesway Records. More, I mean, most of their other stuff is more country blues. This is a little more electric Chicago blues, but great record. Always been a big fan of Sonny Terry and Brandon McGee, and this is one of my favorite albums by them, and it is I Couldn't Believe My Eyes. Next one is a great piano player, which I just found out recently was the half-brother to Muddy Waters, and it is Otis Span. Played piano in the original Muddy Waters band, and like I said, turns out he was a half-brother of Muddy Waters. This is a great album. Again, most of these songs were recorded as singles, not as a complete album, but he has in there Good Morning Blues, Riverside Blues, Trouble in Mind, Going Down Slow. One of the great piano players, great singers, Otis Span. On his album, self-titled album, it's called Otis Span, on Archive of Folk Music label. Next one. What do we got here? We got Charlie Patton. Again, another one that was not recorded as an album because back then, in the 1930s, this was recorded. They were all recorded as 78 singles. They put this together as a compilation for Record Store Day for 2024. Record Store Day compilation. Charlie Patton. I wish I had more information. Nice yellow vinyl. I wish they gave more information on the back of when these songs were recorded. It just says Father of the Delta Blues, selections from Paramount Recordings. So I know they were all done in the 1930s. Charlie Patton, one of the guys who really was the father of Delta Blues singing and playing. Fantastic. Next one is a guy who I had records of his back in high school in the 60s, and those albums are all gone. I got to see him once at the 1970 Ann Arbor Blues Festival, and that is the great Luther Allison. with his album Love Me Mama, Luther Allison and the Blue Nebula on Delmark Records from 1969. This was a repress, no date on the repress on this one, but on the great Delmark label. Very soulful. On this album, he has Jimmy Fastfinger Dawkins plays guitar in a couple of songs, but Luther Allison, just fantastic. Another one of those guys who went to Europe, lived in, I think, Denmark for many, many years during the 60s and 70s. Made trips back to the States now and again, but not often. But yeah, Luther Allison. And 2 years ago at the North Atlantic Blues Festival, I got to see his son, Bernard Allison, play. And he was great also. But here's Luther, the original. Fantastic. Glenn Kellerman and I had a couple of albums are the same on our list. This was one of them. And this is the other white Chicago harmonica player and the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. Their first album, put out in 1965. I got sick of trying to find a nice, clean, original copy. So I grabbed this one. And this is a 2001 Sundays reissue. And it's fantastic. I remember when this came out in 1965. My buddy got a copy. And we were listening to it. And we couldn't help laughing because on the back of it, it says, "We suggest that you play this record at the highest possible volume in order to fully appreciate the sound of the Paul Butterfield Band." And we did. Also in 1965 Newport Folk Festival, I got to see the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. That was during the day concerts they had. I used to have stages around the folk festival. You'd walk from stage to stage during the day. And one of the stages behind the main stage during the day was a blues stage. And that's where I saw Memphis Slim and Willie Dixon. I saw John Lee Hooker. I saw Mississippi John Hurt. And I saw Paul Butterfield Blues Band with Mike Bloomfield playing guitar. Speaking of John Lee Hooker, he's next on my list. Again, I could have picked numerous albums I have by John Lee Hooker, but I decided to go with the real folk blues. Fantastic stuff. 1966. Again, this is a repress, no date on it, but it's an early repress on the Chess label. And I love these real folk blues albums. They put out a number of them. Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, Sonny Boy Williamson. Really nice stripped down albums. Not a lot of instrumentation, but just real acoustic stuff and fantastic. John Lee Hooker, Stella May, I Put My Trust in You, In the Mood, You Know I Know, One Bourbon, One Scotch, and One Beer on the Waterfront. Fantastic. The great John Lee Hooker. Again, I ended up with 23 records because they're guys I just couldn't leave out as some of my favorites. And this is another one. One of my all-time favorites is Elmore James. And this is his album, History of Elmore James. 2-record set on Trip Records. This was put out in 1971. And this also happens to be a record that I picked up when I was out in Seattle a couple of years ago and hung out with Mazzy for the day. And this actually comes from the Coleman collection, which was a collection of records that Mazzy bought after his friend passed away and sold a lot of the records. And I was lucky enough to hang out with Mazzy for the day, went back to his house and picked out a bunch of records, which he was glad to sell me. And this was one of them I grabbed, The History of Elmore James. And this has basically everything you need. Dust My Broom, It Hurts Me Too, Shake Your Money Maker, Pickin' the Blues, Stranger Blues, Find My Kind of Woman, Anna Lee, Mean Mistreater, Look Over Yonder Walls, the great Elmore James, one of the great slide guitar players of the time. Another guy I couldn't leave out because I love his, actually, he can be more considered folk blues than the Chicago blues for sure. And it's Mississippi John Hurt with his album Today. This was recorded in 1966. This was sort of after he was, quote, rediscovered. He put out some albums in the 1930s or some singles in the 1930s. They never really became much for him. He left, went back to Arkansas, I think it was, or Mississippi, maybe not Mississippi, but that's his name. Anyway, went back there, became a farmer, worked the fields for many years, and in the 1960s, they went looking for him and found him, brought him back, and he played the last 5-10 years of his life, concerts and clubs all around the world, and beautiful voice, very mellow, very, very folky, not rough at all, but one of my favorites, the great Mississippi John Hurt. Another guy I couldn't leave out, and again, I have so many records by him, I could have picked many, but this one is nostalgic for me. Excuse me. And it's Lightnin' Hopkins with his album Nothing But the Blues. This originally released in 1960 with a completely different cover and a different title. This was the one that I had. This one came out in 1962, and I had this when I was in high school, probably 1965 or 66. And I had it for years, and finally it was gone. So I was glad to replace it in my collection. This album has been released numerous times with many different titles, many different covers. So it's just ridiculous. You could find this record, and you end up buying 2 or 3 copies of the same record without realizing it. But he has on here Nothing But the Blues, Lightnin's Boogie, which is fantastic, Evil Hearted Woman, Blues for My Cookie, Lightning Special, My Little Cupid Doll, Evil Hearted Woman. I just love this record. Nothing But the Blues by the great Lightnin' Hopkins. Couldn't leave this guy out. Again, which record to pick? I picked this one. Buddy Guy and Junior Wells, the Criteria Sessions. This was originally released this was 2016 Record Store Day release. This was never released, actually. The sessions they released in the 60s, but this is, 1970, I want to say. It doesn't say here. Anyway, at this particular session, the record was recorded and released. These are other cuts from that session. It was produced by Eric Clapton and Tom Dowd and Emmett Erdogan. Yeah, October 1970. That's what I thought. Recorded in Florida. And Eric Clapton does play bottleneck guitar on here, as well as, of course, Junior Wells playing vocals and harmonica, and Buddy Guy playing lead guitar and rhythm guitar. But Eric Clapton does sit in with them for some of the things. Great album. Only 6 songs, but, Lover with a Feeling, Dirty Mother for You, Stone Crazy, Why Am I Treated So Bad? Just great stuff. Buddy Guy and Junior Wells. They were also at the 65 Folk Festival. I saw them. Next one is a guy who I never had a chance to see and just missed it by a year. And he passed away very young. And it's the great Magic Sam. And this is his album, West Side Soul. Magic Sam, 1968. This is a 2009 repress. I went to the 1970 Ann Arbor Blues Festival, and Magic Sam was the big hit at the 69 festival and was supposed to come back for 70, and he died that year, Christmas time, I think it was, in 1969 of a heart attack at 39 years old or so. But very soulful, not your straight up what you expect of a raucous blues singer, but fantastic. Mighty Joe Young plays guitar on here with him. Odie Payne on drums. So fantastic. Magic Sam, West Side Soul. Now we're getting down to the last 10 or so. This record, really considered one of the great recordings of all times. Absolutely love this. And it's Albert King with Born Under a Bad Sign. Again, this is a originally released 1967. And again, I got sick of trying to find a nice, clean original. So I opted for the 2019 Record Store Day release from Craft Recordings. Fantastic sounding record. And he does Born Under a Bad Sign, of course, Crosscut Saw, Oh Pretty Woman, The Hunter, Personal Manager, As the Years Go Passing By. Oh man, if you can find this record, I would grab it in a heartbeat on Stax vinyl. This is Stax label. And again, this was the 2019 Record Store Day release. So glad I picked it up. Fantastic. Getting down to the next couple of the last 5 or 6 records. Here we go. Another record released later. Released 1985, which is sort of at the tail end already of the blues explosion, but one of my favorite albums of all time, and it's album Showdown with Albert Collins, Robert Cray, and Johnny Clyde Copeland. Again, 1985, amazing record. They do T-Bone Shuffle, Lion's Den, She's Into Something, Black Cat Bone, Blackjack. It's just, you can pick this record up for $10 or less usually. Find a nice clean copy and you can't go wrong. One of my all-time favorite albums, Showdown. Next record, many people consider this one of the greatest records in the jazz idiom ever to be put out. It's in my top 5 for sure. And it's Junior Wells' Hudoo Man Blues, originally released in 1965. This is a 1974 repress on Delmark Records. Originally when it came out, they couldn't have Buddy Guy's name on there because he was on the contract to another label. So it had nothing on the front, but on the back, when it said guitar, originally it would say Friendly Guy. And yeah, Buddy Guy playing guitar with Junior Wells, Hudoo Man Blues, Snatch It Back and Hold It, Good Morning Schoolgirl, Hey Lordy Mama, Hudoo Man Blues, You Don't Love Me Baby, Chitlin Con Carne, Yonder Walls. Oh, right up there, one of the greats, one of the great albums of all times. All right, here's the last 4. That was 5. This is 4. No, that was 4. 3. This is another one that Glenn picked out, and this is number 3 for me, and it's Muddy Waters Folk Singer. Again, I could have picked a number of Muddy Waters albums, but Folk Singer is the go-to record for me. This was recorded in 1964. Again, this is a 2015 Analog Productions recording. This is one of the few records that sometimes the later represses sound better. This record sounds, everybody says, it's like they captured lightning in a bottle. You listen to this record, you turn it up and close your eyes and they are there in the room with you. It is amazing how they did it. Muddy Waters on guitar and vocal, Buddy Guy again on guitar, Willie Dixon on bass, Clifton James on drums, recorded September 1963. The original was just a single, but because this is a single record, but it's a gatefold, which has pictures that the original did not have, which is sort of cool to have that. And again, it sounds fantastic. Get a copy of this record and you'll be amazed. Great, great stuff. Number 2 for me, because he's my number 1 singer of all blues, and it's the great Howlin' Wolf. Again, this is a record that was basically singles that he put out in the 50s that were then put together later on as a record. 1962 this came out. This is 2013. This is a lousy copy on that Dolce's record, which is a European all digital recording. It's really not great. But, excuse me, the original's going for $250, $300. So that's never going to happen. I wish the Kraft Recording or Analog Productions would put out a nice copy of this. That would be great. Especially for a record store day. That would be a cool thing to do. But I haven't seen another copy, so I'm holding on to this. It's on that, again, Dolce's label, which when I bought this, I didn't realize that this was really an all digital recording, and it's not great. But the songs are great, and it has the great Howlin' Wolf, who I got to see at the 1970 Ann Arbor Blues Festival. He rode a motorcycle out on stage, got off the motorcycle, and the band broke into Built for Comfort. I ain't built for speed, but fantastic. This album has all his classics. Shake For Me, Red Rooster, Wang Dang Doodle, Spoonful, Down in the Bottom, Backdoor Man, the great Howlin' Wolf. And number 1, if you've stuck around this long, number 1 for me, without a doubt, double record, Robert Johnson, Volume 1 and Volume 2. This Volume 1 released in 1961. Volume 2 was released in 1970. Amazing to know that in 1961, when this album was released, Robert Johnson was little known outside a very small group of blues musicians. These were all recorded in the 1930s, and really nothing happened to them. He wasn't famous. He wasn't well known. He was supposed to go in 39, I think it was, that John Hammond, the singer's father, putting together a big show in New York City at Carnegie Hall of jazz and blues. And Robert Johnson was supposed to be there. He died before the show went, and they brought in, I think, Leadbelly as the stand-in for Robert Johnson. Who would have known what would have happened if Robert Johnson had lived, had gone to New York, had played at the Benny Goodman, John Hammond show that he put up in New York. Who knows what his career would have been. However, we're lucky enough that we do have these recordings by him. And the first album, of course, influenced so many people, you know, all the English bluesmen, Eric Clapton, Peter Green, all those people just got so influenced by this record. The first one has Crossroad Blues, Terraplane Blues, Walking Blues, you all record 1936. Me and the Devil Blues, Milk Cow Blues, Ramblin' on My Mind, Hellhound on My Trail, recorded 1936, 1937. And then a couple of years later, in 1970, they came out with the second volume of Robert Johnson songs. And this one has Kind-Hearted Woman, Dust My Broom, Sweet Home Chicago, They're Red Hot, From 4 Until Late. Cream did that, obviously. Honeymoon Blues, Love in Vain. Rolling Stones did that. So they have number one, the one and only Robert Johnson, Volume 1, Volume 2. All right. I hope you stuck around for the end of it. I really appreciate it if you did. If you like what you saw, give me that thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. And until next time, peace.